Hello, welcome to another image critique here on the Boudoir Guild. I'm Mike Lloyd, professional photographer and educator. I've been doing this since 2010, and early on, I wanted to get certified by PPA to be a print competition judge. Given, I think I'd only entered one competition at that point, it was because I learned the value of these sort of critiques. You can get real constructive feedback by someone who actually knows the mechanics of taking a great photo. And I figured if I can get trained to be one of the judges, it's going to help me up my game as a photographer, because when I'm creating my images, I'm already going to know what needs to be there and what does not need to be there. So that's the value of these critiques. Even if your images aren't the ones being viewed, you're going to learn a lot about photography, and it's absolutely going to change the way you take pictures. Let's dive in. All right, so I described 3 more images from the stash. I have not gone through and reviewed these other than to make sure there's no nudity in them. So you're basically seeing them for the first time that I am, and I'm gonna mark them up like John Madden here as we go through. Okay, so first thing, beautiful image. I love the way the light's coming through. I love the pose, the way the outfit, we're showing off the bow in the back. Good separation of the chin and the shoulder. Oftentimes when photographers bring the chin to the shoulder, they overlap and then you lose the neck entirely. So I never tell my clients, bring your chin and shoulder together, because they lift the shoulder also. Instead, I say bring the chin down to your collarbone, which most people can't do if the shoulder's down. So it naturally creates that separation. And I also shoot the very dark, dramatic film noir look, but there's a balance, and we've gone over this in a couple other image critiques as well. You can't underexpose the image. That's not what dark and moody is all about. Just like the light and airy look, you can't just overexpose the image and call it good. Yes, it's art. Everyone has the freedom to create whatever they want. But in this photo, for example, let me pull up the histogram and I'll show you. So if you look at the distribution of the data on this histogram, we have blacks over here, shadows, midtones. Here we have our highlights, and then our whites over on this side. There is all this data on the left side of the histogram, which is in the blacks. And you'll notice how much of it is smashed up against the left side here. So this curve continues climbing beyond the boundaries of the histogram, which means there's no data there. It got so dark that the image just turned black in those areas, and that cannot be recovered. So even if I brighten up the image significantly, this area of the image is all pure black. No detail left in there. So that is significantly underexposed. Because of that, we lose separation. You can't tell where her arm stops and where the background begins. Same thing with the edge of the chair. We don't see the legs of the chair. Her toes disappear down here. That's all a symptom of being underexposed. So hopefully you're shooting raw if you're doing images like this. If you're doing images at all, hopefully you're shooting raw, so that if you do underexpose, you have the opportunity to save some of that detail. You still should be able to see the legs of the chair, where her feet stop, all of that good stuff. But it's a beautiful image. It's a great pose. It's soft, it's delicate, it's feminine. It's amazing. I'm sure she loved it. You can't let the blacks actually fall into black there. Otherwise, it's underexposed. But otherwise, again, stellar image. I'm sure she loved it. All right, let's go to the next one. So adding props is a balancing act in images, because sometimes we add things in because we want to enhance the photo, but it ends up taking away from the image. I think this is a good amount of cards. If there were a ton more of them around here filling all of this negative space, it would have been completely overwhelming. But you can see the cards were used to keep this, somewhat PG, if you will. But I like the pose, soft hands. Couple things, like it's cropped really close to her hip and her crotch right here. I'd want to see that more mid-thigh, so there's more space between her hips and the top of the frame. I like the amount of space here. None of the hair is cut off. All of that is great. That was really well done. And if we throw the grid on here, you can see the image is pretty well balanced, except for this part of her hip. But if we were to black that out, let me do that. She is perfectly balanced in all 9 boxes over here, based on the rule of thirds in that grid. So that's fantastic. But again, because it's cropped so tightly up here around her hips, we have this extra space that just, it feels cramped. It feels like it's jammed up in the corner of the frame. It feels crowded up there. So that's something to look out for. Also bringing this elbow out just a little bit so you don't have the skin pinching right there in the armpit. But again, I love the hand placement. I love the facial expression. We get chin separation from the neck and from the shoulder over there. So many things going right in this photo. And again, we've got a little bit of underexposure happening where we have the blacks over here blend into the underwear, and you can't tell where the underwear stop and where the background begins. Even if we bring that up again, you can see her skin and the cards, everything else gets totally blown out. It's still completely black where her underwear meet the background. So again, shooting raw, you got to boost those blacks and shadows up so that we have some detail in there. And again, this could be a stellar image if it wasn't underexposed and cropped a little bit farther away. Cool. So this is a thing you've probably heard me say a million times if you've been watching the image critiques on this channel. Let me see if you can guess what it is. What is the first thing I'm going to say? If you guessed that the window is the most prominent part of the image, you are correct, because the first thing our eyeballs see when we view an image is the brightest point, then the most contrast, and then the sharpest focus. We have this huge, bright white spot, and then secondarily, you can see that there's a person in there. And we've got the same level of underexposure we had before. Even if I add in all of these adjustment layers to brighten up the image, this is all totally black. There is no detail there. So I love the short lighting. I love the light on her, but again, we have no separation. We can't tell where she ends and where the background begins. Her feet disappear. All of this is significantly underexposed. If you want a light like this, which obviously using window light, that's your available light source. What you can do is stick her directly in front of this and create silhouettes. That's how you can benefit from that. Otherwise, you need light on everything else to create balance, or to ground her. For one, you need to see the feet. You need to know when she stops and where the background starts. And I'm just drawing lines here based on where I think her legs are supposed to be. I love the expression. I love the pose. There's so many great things potentially going on there. We just can't see any of them. If I bring up my grid lines here, she is positioned perfectly. Like, so many great things about this image, composition-wise, pose-wise. It's just so underexposed in that area. And again, I know it's because you have this hard, or this really intense light source coming in and nothing on the other side. But this is another reason, learn how to use off-camera flash so that you can fill in everything on this side of the room to keep that detail so that we don't totally lose our subject in the background. So there you go. That is our critique of the day. I hope you learned a ton from this. A couple key takeaways. Shoot raw. So if you end up underexposing a little bit, you can still save all that detail and we don't lose separation in our images. When you're cropping, give your subjects room to move around in the frame, like we have over here, where her bottom is smashed up against the top of the frame. And that's kind of been our theme, our big takeaways from this one. Properly expose your background, no matter what style of photography you're doing, and then give everyone some room to move around inside the frame. If you want to get your own images in one of these critiques, I would love to include them. Just email me, mike@boudoirguild.com, and we can get them featured, and I can give you some constructive feedback on how to improve your craft. Just make sure the photos are 3,000 pixels on the longest edge, there's no nudity, and no watermarks or logos. So again, just email them over to me and I'd be happy to include them. I've got a ton of other critiques on this channel for both websites and images, logos also. So be sure to watch all of those and you can learn from everyone else's mistakes so that you can improve your craft that much faster. You are amazing. See you inside.